Okay, for this last lesson, for this unit, you may use a calculator. We're going to compare with like greater than and less than and ordering all real numbers. So they might be rational or irrational. We can use the less than sign or the greater than. And remember, we read those from left to right. So like if we'd say 2 is, since we're talking about the 2, that's less than 3. But if we were going to have the 3 first, 3 is greater than 2. So you read it from left to right like a book. So for these, some of them you might need to solve so you can compare them. So like we have 2 or the square root of 8. So you can find the square root of 8 or you can estimate. And you know that 2 times 2 is 4 and 3 times 3 is 9. So you know that this is pretty close to 9. So you know that is going to be bigger than the 2. Okay, when we have negatives, remember, it's actually the one that's closer to 0. So I'm going to write closer to 0. And so this one would be a 2.5. That's point negative. And the other one is negative 1.5. So since that one is closer to 0 on the number line, that one's going to be bigger. Okay, 12.5 compared to 145. Well, I know that 12 times 12 is 144. And this is, and that's just a little more than 144. And this is half, so we know that one's bigger. Okay, so then you're going to also have to list from either least to greatest or greatest to least. Some words that they might use from least to greatest would be ascending, so you should be familiar with these. Whoops, ascend, that's a C. Ascending, increasing, minimum to maximum. Okay, you could write that down. And then the greatest to least would be the opposite. So descending, decreasing, and then max to min. So it's helpful to first put all the values in the same form. So let's practice. When you have a fraction and you may use your calculator, you're going to do 1 divided by 3, and that's going to be 0.3 repeating. And then remember, you can either times it by 100 or you move it over twice. And so it's going to be 33. And since it's repeating, there's going to be another 0.3 repeating percent sign. Okay, if we have a decimal, if you recall from the other lessons, if it's 0.2, we can say that as 2/10. So 2/10 equals 1/5. Move it over twice, and that's 20%. Okay, if you have a percent, you could move it back twice and have the decimal as 0.5. And then you can say that as 5/10, which is 1/2. You also knew 50% is half. So go ahead and do the rest of them and pause it and then check to see if you got them correct. Okay, so you can see, and you might want to pause it so you can look at them. This one does say 75% down here. This is 150% because remember, percents can be bigger than 100. So go ahead and pause it if you need to. Now we're going to start comparing. So when they're negatives, remember, it's the one closer to 0. So if you change 7/8, I look at this as 7 is way more than half of 8. So I know that without negative signs, 7/8 would be bigger. But so 0.5 is closer to 0. Okay, next we have pi squared, which is 3.1, blah, 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 goes on forever. And then we have the square root of 50. So you could do that on your calculator. And I was going to pull mine up here because you can also estimate. But I'm going to do the square root of 50. And it is 7.07 something something. But this was pi squared. So this is 3 times 3, basically. I didn't see the square the first time, I don't think. So, okay, next we have negative signs. So again, I always find the bigger one. So I know this is 75%. But since it's negative, we do the opposite. So that one's bigger. Okay, this one, you can't just go by that the 5 is bigger than the 4. You also need to look at the square root. And so they're pretty close. So you could do the square root of 60 on your calculator, or you could estimate. And the square root of 60 is 7.7. And then the square root of 63 is 7.9. So again, because that starts with 5, that one is going to be bigger. Okay, next, it took her 35.25 minutes to finish her chores on Saturday. And it took her brother that many minutes to finish his chores. Who finished her chores the fastest? So remember, fastest would mean less time. So you go ahead and tell us and comparing and tell us their numbers. So go ahead and pause it. Okay, so I divided 1 by 6. Which gave me Derek's total, which was less time than the other one. So he was faster. Okay, now you're going to put these in order from, well, it depends what the words say. Some say decreasing, increasing. So make sure you read the words. And I will do the first one with you. So what I do is I make little notes. Like I know this is 11. I know this is 9 point something going on forever. And then the square root of 130, you can either estimate or you can do it on your calculator. So I'm going to do it on my calculator. And that is 11.4 something. It goes on forever because it's irrational. So then I know that the first one would be, are we doing, descending. So we are going like down. We're descending down. So we want the biggest one first. I had to think about that. So the first one is the square root of 130. And then the next one would be the 11.1. And the next one would be the square root of 121. And then pi squared. So make sure you read the words. We have increasing order. So that would be going from smallest to biggest. Now on this one, I would change them all into percents. But you can do whatever you want. Least to greatest. Ascending is going from smaller to bigger. Greatest to least here, and then descending would be going down again. Or decreasing, sorry. Okay, so do those, pause, and then look at my answers. Okay, so if you go ahead and look at number 8 and 9. Number 8, I put the numbers up here. Remember, they're all negatives, but I forget about that in the beginning, so I just put 5. Divided 1 by 5 here, divided 11 by 2, put the numbers there, and then it's least to greatest. So, let's see here, where am I at here? So least to greatest, so basically it's the opposite because of the negative sign, because the least is the furthest away from 0. So I have the 5.5, which is 11 over 2, and then 5 and 1/5, which is 5.2. And then this one, 5.025, and then I have the plain 5. Okay, next one, list in ascending order. So that is smallest to biggest. So we have, you could turn those into decimals or percents. So go ahead and pause it if you need to. That the first one is 2/5. The last one is 43%. I turned them into decimals and compared them. So I put 43% as 0.43. Okay, the next two, you can see decreasing order is biggest to smallest. And then here it's greatest to least. But then I either write the biggest one over here and go back, or I think of it backwards since we have negative signs. Okay, and the last one. They're showing list the towns in ascending order according to their temps. So again, they're trying to trick you with the negative signs. So ascending order means going up. And so the lowest temp would be Icetown. So I'm just going to put an I. And then the next one is the Shiverton. And then we have Little Flake. And then we have the Chillyville. So go ahead and try the practice problems on the homework page.